Thank you so much, Heesoo, for that. And thank you everyone for your generous time of being here, especially Slash for organizing all of this. This is pretty much my dream talk to have with Heesoo and Kat, so thank you both for being here as well. We're going to read some of my notes. You Are a Paradise in Clothes, my site-specific installation, takes form through a composite of light, sound, scent, plant, spirits, and imagery, an attempt for healing of 7 generations of my family, simultaneously from the past and future. This project depicts the past, present, and future with the convergence of all 3 at its realization. I'd like to begin from the past, within the first unintentional spirit house I encountered, the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. With over 20,000 pieces of art, the largest collection of Asian art within the United States, it's very possible that viewers might look through centuries of Asian diaspora without ever encountering art from the Philippines. In fact, the first exhibition they put on of Filipino art was coincidentally when I started working at the museum, and it was the first show I helped install. The disparity in display placement and sheer aesthetic between the exhibition, collecting art, collecting memories, and the rest of the museum's work makes it easy to imagine how before this exhibit, there must have been very little Filipino art at all. Each piece of work dripped with history, sharing a brief visual story of the Philippines' diverse and multifaceted history. Unlike the museum's other galleries, the poignancy and attention-grabbing elements of collecting art, collecting memories rendered the exhibit impossible to ignore, despite its small size. But it could still not shake the uncomfortable feeling of the framing of the exhibition inside a violent space with thousands of stolen objects and wonder, why does a museum validate our experiences and allow us to feel seen? Why often do the images within a museum archive present a flattened story? This inclination reminded me of the so-called archival turn of the 1990s when artists interrogated the archive's truth-telling claims. Through varied approaches, it was argued artists challenged the authority of the archive, revealing the social conditions underlying the stories we tell of our past. My practice, however, is less concerned with exposing the inner workings and truth of the archive. Instead, within my work, I'm interested in catalyzing forms of so-called witchy realism, those acts of conjuring, seance, and communion that revel in the archive's absurd or irrational dimensions. And to clarify, my use of witchy realism, of course, draws inspiration from magical realism, but with the important distinction that magical realism is largely passive. What happens when a highly detailed, realistic setting is invaded by something too strange to believe? Witchy realism must be actively performed. It summons the atmosphere of strangeness in which it resides. The large images projected within my installation come from the Asian Art Museum's archive, collected from the time I worked there. These gorgeous black and white images stunned me, with scribbling notes of their locations existing in a place so close to where my family was originally located. I noted them as a window into another unintentional spirit house. Much like the exhibition, collecting art, collecting memories was doing, I was trying to collect or understand my own sense of identity within this archive. Using mirrors within my work has been a continual theme in my practice. Growing up, mirrors were placed outside houses to prevent evil spirits from entering. They provide a portal or reflection, both optically and sonically, and become a way to connect to a potential other realm and amplify the energy around us. They exist within liminal space, just like the yellow light within my installation. There's a momentary pause in the way time is linear. Just like within a sunset or sunrise, I wish to point to pause within these gaps, and I'm interested in communicating with another realm to create a text that can be understood only through its reflection. In a sense, this sort of representation functions for me within the installation as a weak mirror. Viewing weak not as a deficit, but of a means of accessing those qualities at the very edge of perception, the effective, intuitive, and ethereal. In this sense, a weak mirror produces forms of apparition, diversion, or mirage. Overall, the imagery and its reflection seeks out moments of porousness, where the fantastic, wild, magical, and spiritual potentials latent in the archive can be amplified. My aunt would wear a rosary around her neck and pour the oil onto her fingers and draw a cross on the underside of a plate. Then she would light a candle and burn the oil face of the plate until the surface turned black. She often left the wax drop on the water until it hardened. Either way, she mouthed words no one could hear. Some sort of spell, and a figure would appear on the blackened plate or abstractly shaped wax, the being who was causing the illness. Throughout my childhood, the figure had been different beings, shape-shifting hybrid forms that we could not quite make out, but one that would affect our whole family. My aunt would cover my back in leaves and my forehead in oil. Traditions were adapted instead of forgotten, birthing the succeeding generation of healers like my aunt, the influence of herbal medicine paired with Catholicism. In the healing practices learned from my aunt, to care for one's heart, there must be an understanding of how to care for one's psychological, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. What is thought of as the most vital is maintaining a physical way of life that fosters a spiritual connection to the land itself. My great-grandfather and grandmother, my grandfather, 3 of my uncles, 2 of my cousins, my aunt, my father have all had heart attacks, and I myself have a heart condition. The heart disease I've come to understand that so rampantly affects my family, I believe to be connected with colonialism and migration that have fractured my family's connection to both land and the sense of belonging. It is understood in various healing practices you are able to heal 7 generations in the past and the future. As our skin has 7 layers, my aunt would say we are thick as 7 generations. Overall, my attempt in making this work is to retrace and reinterpret the gaps and erasure within my family in an effort to dispel the disease or evil spirit we've been carrying for generations. Through my installation, my intention is to create an experience that is not historically factual, but one that explores my relationship to stewardship through generational inheritance. Within that, I'm interested in exploring larger systemic contracts of whiteness, cultural aphasia, hybridity as a means to grieve and to inscribe loss softly and fiercely into the landscape. For example, I'm interested in the land my family still owns in the Philippines, visiting it on Google Maps, as you can see on the image on the left, or to referencing the importance of what is left in Little Manila and Stockton, where my grandfather moved when he arrived to the US, now divided between a freeway and a McDonald's. By delving into these portals of human experience, I create an inheritance with all the fears, aspirations, reasonings, and prayers that come with an attempt for healing. The construction of this installation is an effort to connect multiple histories, fragmented perceptions of self, and contradictions present within lived experiences, all grounded in an emphasis towards uncertainty, plurality, and faith. In learning about the complexities, adaptations, and hybridization of orchids, they exist and resist all categorization in a way I find really inspiring when I think about hybridity within myself. And I've used orchids in my work to print both historical and personal imagery onto the petals in an effort to translate metaphors of value and resiliency within the hybridity and homogenization of people. The proliferation of orchids sheds light on the imperial practice of affectionate appropriation. Colonial imagination and desire drive humans to seize natural objects and endow them with new values. But I also wonder at what cost to the value of the very land that they're taken from. In some ways, the most central or ever-present element to this installation is my dad's total landscaping truck radio, becoming a way for me to explore hybrid forms of ritual protection and conjuring, especially in regard to imagined spaces of sonic citizenship. The radio's historical embeddedness in the very concept of the post-colony shift and amplify boundaries of objectification. Through the scan of an AM radio, the frequencies and dimensions can travel as far as 100 miles during the day and 2,000 at night. When paired with other radios, the sound transforms into a controlled theremin. As the scanning of the radio will be constantly searching to pick up sound throughout my installation, the attempt for connection is always present. As you enter and exit my installation, you may find yourself moving through an arch of small hanging bells, a reference to the Balangiga bells, church bells taken as war trophies during the Philippine-American War. The bells, originally used as a warning, were moved to San Francisco and put on display of the victory. Their decision for them to display them on pedestals, rendering them useless. Ultimately, the city of Balangiga decided to make copies of the bells because the US government would not return them. To me, this felt like a reflection of the rest of my work within the space. How does the archiving of objects, imagery, plants, and people no longer allow them to be what they once were? What identity of the bell becomes more authentic, the original or the replica? Altogether, these components form a spatial timeline: imagery, excerpts, declarations, and remembrances. Positioning these objects all within my own version of a spirit house to form a missing story of my past, I hope to capture the plagued ancestral spirit that may be causing illness to my family.
Thank you so much for watching the video earlier. It's not short videos, I appreciate it. So I made the Leymusoom garden video and the whole project in 2023, but the research took like a year for me. And the first inspiration was from my grandparents' garden in South Korea. This is Gongju. It's like a 2-hour train from Seoul, and my grandparents' mountains are there. This is their house. So in 2022, I heard a news from my mom that she inherited a mountain from my grandparents after my grandfather passed away. So my grandfather from mother's side is originally from North Korea, but he moved down to South during the Korean War and met my grandmother, and they cultivated the whole family. And they don't have any relatives or any family in Gongju area, but they, in the past, like a while ago, they bought 3 mountains in very rural area. And in the first mountain, they designed and built this house together. And this is the view of the garden or the front yard. Yeah, and the second mountain, they used to grow a lot of trees. And the third mountain, it's kind of wild, like wild nature. A lot of branches, and there's like small cabin that they used to live before they completed this house. So there are 3 mountains, and one of the mountain has, the first mountain has the family cemetery too. I will show you the photo soon. So I heard the news that my mom inherited the smallest mountain. She's not the youngest, but because she's daughter, she got the smallest. And one of my mom's closest friend is Korean shaman. And the shaman says that's the spiritual mountain. Like there is Dokkaebi living there. Dokkaebi is the spiritual being in Korean shamanism and Korean culture. Like they have very spiritual power, kind of playful. It's some kind of god, and they often appear as family, like mom and dad were kids together. So I heard the news, wow, my mom inherited the smallest mountain, and that's the spiritual mountain, the special one. And I think it really blew my mind, because before I started this whole project about this garden, I somewhat felt I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like culturally, I feel belong to here, like America, and I live here and I work here as an artist, but there is definitely language barrier. And also, I'm not a citizen, so I'm always like trying to renew my visa, always like some kind of hardship as an immigrant. And in Korea, I have my family, but I don't feel related to them. There's the gatekeeping was quite hard, like when I tried to start my artist career there. So I don't have any, like, I barely have some art network there, like friends. So often I describe myself and my studio in my videos in before this piece was always starting from some galaxy, like dark galaxy, and the 3D scanned model of my current studio at the time is like spinning like planet, like, so that means like I'm trying to find where to land, but I don't know where to go. It's the kind of vibe. So I always felt some kind of lostness, but after I heard the mountain, I was like, oh, maybe that's some actual location I can imagine Leymusoom utopia. So I went research travel to meet my family again and do some research about the mountain and the family history. So these are the footages of my travel. My grandmother and my grandmother's sister and my mom, we were like having some dinner talk, and we were like hanging out, them watching TV in the living room and celebrating their birthday together. I think I spent like a week there together, and going through all their old closets, like checking all the old things that my grandmother don't need anymore, and then so that I can add it to my archive. And this is the view from the cemetery. This is their bedroom, like the window. So my grandmother and grandfather could see this Virgin Mary statue from their bed when they're laying down. And they have their parents here. So, and my grandfather and grandmother made this whole stairs to the Bear Mountain. And this is how it used to look like. So I have really vivid memory about this home, especially when I was younger, that my grandparents put a lot of effort to make it very beautiful. Like, this is the artificial waterfall. They even made this artificial waterfall in their garden, and having the flowers, hosting people, and like doing this kind of birthday celebration. But when I visited the house again in 2022, I felt so sad because since my grandfather passed away and my grandmother is ill now, nobody can take care of the garden anymore, and all the flowers and trees are kind of dried and dying, and they're cutting them off because nobody can actually take care of them. So it was very different. Like, so as I'm doing more research of the house, I feel I need to reimagine and activate in my utopia. So I 3D scanned the whole house. I 3D scanned the bedroom. This is where my grandfather and grandmother sleep, and this is where my grandfather passed away too. And when I was visiting them, I slept with my grandmother together here. And this is their living room, having the family photo. And these are all the old gardening tools and the cooking tools they used to use often. Like, they got all rusted and dusted, and so I think I feel very sad to see this, because nobody is like really using it, and it's been there like forever like this. So I did the 3D scanning to every single object that I can, like, I want to bring it to my utopia, or I want to bring it to my world and use it there. So these are old, the agumi is like, they used to make some food or some party here, and these are all the jars of ongis. They used to store a lot of kimchi and bean paste, pepper paste, but it's all empty, and it's like nobody is using it. So this was my research, and one thing I really learned from this travel is, at first my research, I was interested in researching the Korean shamanism and the spiritual being Dokkaebi, And I went to the mountain too, and I 3D scanned the whole, not whole, but like tried to 3D scan the mountain. But what really inspired me was actually my family history and how my family started their own family here and settled down and cultivate their life. And this whole house and garden has some kind of lifespan like my grandparents. Like my grandmother described this garden as herself, like there's up and downs. There used to be really like bright and like a lot of energy before, but now it's like slowing down and like we are like going together. So I think I decided to add this garden and house and the whole family history as part of my Leymusoom utopia. So then I shifted the focus of the research and the piece while I'm doing the travel. And this is how the whole piece came together. So this was the sochang screen. Like sochang is some kind of fabric commonly used in Korean culture, like a lot of shamanic rituals, Buddhist rituals. They use this fabric. It's from a very specific town in Korea, and also like there's some term like saying Korean people use the sochang when they were born, like to wrap the baby and like for the diaper, and when they die they wrap their body with the sochang again. So it's like it's from the start of their life till the end. So I wanted to like the whole structure of hanging the sochang I was inspired by the shamanic rituals using sochang, and I just created some screen with it so that I can project the Leymusoom garden video I just shared with you. And this is where people could lay down and watch the video and like kind of sleep, taking nap, yeah. And this is other side of the gallery. This is inspired by Sonamnamu, which is the spiritual tree in Korean culture. Every town used to have this spiritual tree, like guardian of the town, and they hang this the colorful fabric from the branches and like have some notes at the end. So I was inspired by that, and I also had some rice altar here playing the 2-channel video of me and my mom talking about our relationship and her memory about the house and my experience to create this whole project, like connecting my grandparents' immigration history and my current life as an immigrant in the US and all the vectors in my life, so they could like listen to the video and voice here. And I made this kind of sculpture. All of these strings are from my studio or from Korea. So you can see the power cord here. So for some reason, like even before I have this exhibition plan, I just kept all the hardware that I used in my studio. I didn't throw them away. I think I felt kind of bad to throw them away because all the power cord, USB or mouse pad, everything they burned their life for my practice. Literally, like they just like literally burned their whole life and body, and I'm like, oh, you dedicated so much. And I think it's coming from Korean shamanism or Korean culture. Like my dad used to talk to his car always like naming the car and like talking to the car. And I also like talk to my computer. Like I check the temperature in the morning. Like, okay, you're so hot, you work so too much. You need some rest. And then I turn it off, something like that. So I see all the hardwares and softwares I use for my work as my ritual tool, and I'm the shaman connecting my utopia I'm envisioning with my ancestors and the loved one I want to be together. And the tools are the technology or the hardware software tools are my what I'm using to visualize the spiritual interaction or reimagined history of them or about me. And while I'm making the piece, my D drive burned. So sad. I tried my best, but I couldn't save. There's something is burned. So I think all my 7 years of raw files are there, just stored there. So I'm keeping it till I have the technology where it's new way to access, get the access. So this is where I store it. I wrote some love letter to the D drive, and the right side is the death certificate from the data recovery service. They said they spent 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, but the recovered data is 0. So I put the rights there first, and the D drive, and my love letter, and all the receipt and the email corresponds with the data recovery service. Yeah, so it's in my house. I'm waiting for the future. And I was inspired by my grandparents' ongi, and I felt so sad that the ongis are now empty in their garden. So I 3D scanned, and I don't know if you found it, but in the video they were like rotating in the garden. Yeah, so I also wanted to bring it to the gallery. So I 3D scanned the whole, a lot of like ongis, so I could get the size and shape of the ongis. So I commissioned my friend Eugene Han, and she made the ongis based on the size and the shape I wanted. And I also printed all the these are the thumbnails of all the videos I took in Korea and in the US while I'm working on this project. And these are some letters from my friends, all the memories that I want to store. I printed them, and there were some motor underneath inside the rice altar, so they were spinning in the gallery, like realizing the animation back to the real life. And these are some fabrics from the printed fabrics I made, the mountain and the Leymusoom garden, and those green and blue fabrics are from my mom's wedding, and she gave me from her closet. So I made some hanging fabric scroll of all the archive memory. And this is another close-up of the rice altar with monitor. And I hold all the power cords with the fabric. I wrapped it and stored it in the ongi. Yeah, this is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. So just kicking us off, I was wondering if you could talk to us a bit about the process of making both of your works. As artists who both work with family and historical archives, I'm really curious about how you end up choosing the materials that end up in your work. Like, can you thinking of the images on the orchid petals, and you talked a little bit about the certain locations and certain objects, but I'm curious if either of you had any surprising revelations in learning about these objects that you end up using, and if there was anything that you learned before that you hadn't known.
Yeah, first of I feel like a lot of the work that I collected was from family photo books, going through the archives at the museum that I was working at. So a lot of them were things that I had never discovered before. And a lot of my family sort of just had these photos that they just left. And there was no sort of passing down of this history of our family. And I think that's kind of the inclination to make the work to begin with, is that there is really not a lot of documentation of our family's history and how my dad's side arrived to San Francisco. So I felt like it was like some sort of responsibility that I just took on, that I was like, this needs to be like documented in this way, and considered that it hadn't before.
I think when I did the research trip, I think that was almost my first time to do the oral history interview like seriously for my work. So I interviewed my grandmother and my grandmother's sister and my mom about every object. That whenever I find something from their closet or their room, like I ask like where is it from and how you used. And I think I learned a lot about their everyday routine. Like, for example, there was some broom they used to clean the garden, and I asked like, how do you use this? And my grandmother told me like, oh, they got it from the local market, like it opens like every week or something, and her caregiver took it for her, and she used to use it like every morning, but she can't now, so the caregiver is like using it right now. Like whenever there is some guests coming, they try to like clean it. And after my grandma became very ill, my mom was actually using it. She said whenever she feels sad or she feel like powerless, because my mom was like taking care of my grandfather before he passed away, and also my grandmother as well. She's not living with them, but she's like often visiting them. And yeah, so she mentioned that whenever she feel very emotional and sad, she's like come outside and use it and cleaning the garden and kind of like help her to meditate. So I brought the broom with me and wanted to actually I didn't include the animation part in the final work, but I used it as well with my 3D avatar, 3D version of myself. So I 3D scanned the object and animated with me. So I was using it to clean my garden and meditate as well. So I think the most surprising and inspiring for me to learn was the kind of very detailed everyday routine that I often neglect to even ask questions. Yeah.
In both of your answers, you're both talking about your work leading you to new connections with your family members, right? And both of your works are also, they have these healing properties or healing dimensions to them. And I'm really interested in, how these works have been reparative for you and your families, if they have been at all.
I think that is very important part of my work. That was healing myself and my family was actually the motivation for me to become an artist even. And always, I think like my practice is some kind of ping pong. Like my practice inspired me and like made my life better, or like influence my life, and then I try to reflect that to my work back. So it's like ongoing practice, and compared to when I first started to make art, or like even start like Leymusoom project back in 2017 or 18, I see a lot of growth and progress in my personal life as well. Yeah, so for example, my mom and my relationship got much better. Like before I realized that like there was some burden like in my mind. Like I felt kind of like, oh, I don't want to think about my mom too much because it made me so sad, or like I know I can't change her life, so I'm like so powerless, and I tried to like escape from it. And for some reason, like coming to America and starting my own practice and life here kind of made me feel like free in some way. And I started Leymusoom practice. It was at the beginning it was more like conceptual practice. Oh, I want to like investigate more about my female ancestor side, and I want to think about like the bigger idea. But a little bit later, my mom got cancer. She's fine now. She got the treatment, but the news was so shocking to me, and it really changed the perspective of how I see my own work. Like before it was like really conceptual liberation of ancestors, but after I learned my mom is ill and I didn't know how much serious it is, and like I'm waiting for the result, and I want to go to Korea but I can't because of my work schedule. I have the contract. And then I watched my video again, and I see my mom like molting. Like I have another video like Leymusoom 목욕탕. And I had the solo exhibition at all around the time I got the news. And when I'm installing the show, I constantly see my mom taking out the old skin and getting the new body. It was like looping video, 4-minute looping video. Like we are constantly getting a new body, and it really healed me in some way. So I felt how much it's important for me, and like how much it's helping me and my mom. Yeah, so it's some kind of example.
So beautiful. Yeah, I feel like similar. Like I feel like I started my practice as well to heal my family in some way, or to center it around healing, especially around sort of the illness that my entire family's had. And I think that they didn't really consider that there could be a connection to the sort of ancestral trauma that they were facing until I was pointing out sort of like the lineage and the history that's kind of invisible. And I feel like through my work we've been able to have more serious conversations of just about faith and religion, especially because I grew up pretty Catholic. But my aunt has a sort of healing practice where she could involve, like, I don't know, just a different way to approach these really serious issues that are within my family. And I think because they realized that there can be other ways to view things, even if it's just through pinpointing different parts of my family or pointing out our sort of lineage and documenting it, and then seeing that through my work, we've been able to have more conversations about these sort of like alternative practices. Yeah, and so it's been really nice to actually have more conversations around my family and not have them sort of, I don't know, I think it's easy especially for them when they go through trauma, not to talk about it. And my dad doesn't really even bring up, his family history of being in the Philippines until I was like, well, where are we from? What city? Like, where do you still have land? So, yeah, it's been a nice way to sort of like actually have conversations about these things.
Yeah. Both of you come from extremely Catholic families, and both of your works are exploring, like you're saying, Katie, alternative methods of approaching healing that isn't through, prayer to God. I'm curious if you guys could both talk more about what that, like sharing your work for the first time with your family was like. Like, Heesoo, I'm thinking about, your mom now getting really into shamanism, right? And Katie, I'm curious more about how it has been approaching that with your family. I know we've talked about how, half of your family is extremely Catholic, and then your aunt identifies as a healer, and there's a whole other side of your family that has sort of like rebuked that.
I think my family has been witness my practice from the very beginning because I started to make art in my bedroom, so there was no secret. And my personality is I love to talk about like what I'm feeling and thinking in my family, just like not even like discussion, just like I'm really open to it. Yeah. And when I first started to make art, like it was not about my family necessarily, but it's about my own body. And I used to be in business major in undergrad, and I shifted my career path around the senior year. So we had a lot of like conversation about it, and like they already know where I'm going and why I'm doing it. So even when I first started to make work about them, they kind of understood. They understood really well what I'm trying to say, and my mom is really happy to see herself in my work. Yeah, and I'm very supportive, and yeah.
Yeah, I feel like my family's been pretty supportive of everything, even if they don't fully understand the inclination of doing it. But I think with my aunt's healing practices, there's a really easy inclination for them to. They would kind of growing up be like, oh yeah, she's a little weird. She's got issues. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that they didn't take any of it very seriously, and there was sort of like this disavowal of her views and beliefs, and I think actually bringing up like our family's past and like going in through our ancestral lineage and understanding that there is this sort of like lineage of healers in our family and it's not just based in nothing has actually been really helpful for them to understand her and even understand me. So yeah, I feel like it's been like this sort of like pathway into their openness towards other forms of belief and faith, which has been really helpful, I think.
I'm also really interested in the different technologies that you both use in your practice to conjure and collaborate with what you've called non-human beings. I'm thinking of the theremin in your work, Katie, and then Heesoo, your use of 3D scanning, you have this digital utopia, even your use of AI in your Firefly series. I'm curious about what you both feel your use of the digital affords you that you can't access through other forms of making.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a nice medium to explore sort of there is no boundary and dimension within sound. Like, of course, there's a certain aspect where it no longer works or you can no longer hear it, but it's still always running, especially the radio. It's constantly picking up new stations wherever you are. So I'm really interested in this idea of what a sonic citizenship is, which Michio Akiyama writes in his book about. And the sort of, we're always a constant participation in sound. And that has always really interested me in the ways that we can always sort of interject or create our own voice. And for me, the AM radio with the theremin, for me was a way to sort of like interject with the sort of radio that is always projecting like a sound that we might not necessarily want. But yeah, I feel like for me the digital sort of exists within this idea of the fantastic, which I've been really interested in my work, where the uncanny is sort of like understanding my work in a way that's grounded in reality, but then there's this sort of like magical element, but the fantastic is sort of suspended in this, I don't know, disbelief that, or understanding, is this real or not? And I feel like the sound of the theremin and the functioning of the theremin tends to amplify and do that and stay in that space. So I've kind of continued with digital work because of that.
A follow-up question, Katie, quickly. Can you explain what a theremin is to everybody, and then also how you built one in your installation?
Yeah, you might know about a theremin from like sci-fi movies, but it's sort of this channel or antenna that you can control and play by the use of your hand and the proximity to your hand. And I learned about, once I inherited my dad's old radio from his car, I wanted to use it as a scanner, and then I found out you can actually, when I put another radio next to it, it started being really odd, and then I realized you can turn any 3 AM radios into a theremin because of their long waves. So it's kind of it's like a step-by-step thing, but basically the tuning capacitor on one radio, you can sort of manipulate and create an antenna for it, and the radio will be scanning and functioning fine, and then as you put your hand near the antenna, it will make the theremin sound and you can play it.
And one more question to that. Has it picked up anything interesting while you've been in the gallery?
Yeah, when I first installed it, I was like, oh no, there was no sort of like stations that were coming up. I think because of the wall or something. I was like, oh no! But then it had this beautiful wind, like rustling sound, this sort of like ambient noise that was happening. But then randomly, when I was in there the other week, just like pop music was playing. I was like, oh, okay, there is sometimes like some sort of channel. And weirdly, it like switched stations, and the person talking said, "I'm here," and that really like it gave me chills because that's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Okay, Heesoo.
I think I briefly talked about it, but so I started to make art in my bedroom without like. I never learned how to make art, like how to paint or how to make animation. So I was very fluid. Still, I'm very fluid about like choosing the medium and material. I always think about the conceptual direction or what I really like try to bring here, and even if I don't have any experience about using the medium, I try to do it. So for example, 3D animation, I started to learn it in my MFA. I made some study group with my undergrad friends who wanted to get some game company job later. So we were like studying the program like every day, like together, something like that. So I use a lot of different kind of softwares and hardware, and it's based on the specific personality of the work that I'm making at the time. And the recent work, Leymusoom Firefly series, and it's a photograph series I started in 2023. I'm using Adobe Photoshop a lot for my other photograph series, and I learned there is some new function at the time. It was a beta service at the time without official launching before, and even though I didn't have any plan to make work about it, but I wanted to understand and experience what my relationship could be with the software. Yeah, so I tried, and I found really interesting visuals, like results of it, and I don't have any image about it here, but basically what I did was I brought my original family photo in the empty, like blank canvas and expanded the viewpoint of the old family photo. And my first intention was I wanted to create some holistic viewpoint of my childhood home. Because I was so short and little, I don't have the holistic view I don't remember the holistic view of the house. Like I have a very vivid memory about the floor pattern and the furniture's food, but I don't remember the upper part of the house or the layout of the house. And for me, the photo album and each of the photos felt like some kind of puzzles. And there's a missing part like between them. So I wanted to fill the gap with the AI, and it ended up became some kind of really intimate, and I would describe quite beautiful interaction. I felt it's similar to the hypnotherapy session I do for my work. Yeah, very like the AI is like going into my mind and sharing some 3 possible cards that I feel related, and I choose one and like more and more and more. So yeah, and I see the tools and AI as like I think them as some kind of agency, like they are helping my work, and I appreciate their support and their dedication. Yeah.
They help fill in the gaps for you.
Yes, and like help me to recall the lost memory.
Right.
Yeah, like it's similar how the hypnotherapy session is working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I see a really big similarity between the working with AI and the hypnotherapy session. So my next project is something all about it. Yeah.
So I have one last question for you before we open it up to the audience. And it's about your collection, or your connection to land. I love seeing Leymusoom Garden and Your Paradise Enclosed in conversation with each other, because I think it opens this really interesting dialogue about what we have to learn from land. Heesoo, you recreated the land that your grandparents lived on, right? In this digital utopia, and you're looking to land as a way to tap into indigenous knowledge, matrilineal relationships, and these are the sorts of things that patriarchy, Catholicism have supplanted and suppressed in your family. Katie, in your work, I'm so drawn to the orchids, as we've discussed, for so many reasons. One, because the way that the orchid petals take the images, so much so that when they start to wither, it becomes indiscernible what the printed image is and what the actual natural pattern of that orchid is. And I find this extremely compelling because two stories converge on these petals. And the first is the migration of Filipinos to the US, and then the second is the cultivation of orchids in non-tropical environments. And to me, this is just two different sides of the same coin. Both of you have expressed to me that your practices have led you to developing your own relationships to land, to plants. Katie, you cultivate orchids yourself. And Heesoo, you talked to me about getting into gardening after visiting your grandparents' place. And I'm wondering if you could talk about what this way of learning, what this form of knowledge has taught you. What have you learned from connecting to land and plants in this way?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been really drawn to plants and flowers because my dad worked in landscaping, and I would go with him on his jobs when I was just really little, and we'd be at all of these different, all around the Bay Area. He had these really amazing clients that had these crazy gardens, and it was just crazy to see the collection of plants and flowers that they had. And orchids were always this special other thing where it was this really sort of just, that's a fancy plant, don't touch that, my dad will handle that. But I also got really interested in their history and the way that the cloning and hybridization of them to come to places that aren't tropical happened. And for me, it felt like this sort of beautiful example of a hybrid identity and a resilient identity. And it felt like it was some sort of metaphor for myself when I'm trying to understand who am I in this sort of mixed racial identity. And these orchids sort of exist and actually thrive after being hybridized and cloned and becoming this other thing. And it really inspired me in my practice. So it kind of comes up in my work a lot for all of these reasons of the history of sort of maintaining plants and land and the value system within the orchid.
Yeah, I started to do gardening after the travel. I think I felt I needed to do it because while I'm making the garden, so Leymusoom garden is not only just, it's made not only with the 3D scan models from my family's garden in Korea, but I also 3D scanned my home and my garden in San Francisco at the time of the production. So it's connecting the two different lands and locations that I was located and my family is settled down there. So and while I'm working on all the going through all the interview recordings and the 3D scanned garden and cultivating it, remaking it in the digital space, I felt weird to just stay in front of the monitor. I felt it doesn't feel right to just make it virtually only. I want to feel it, I want to feel how it actually feel like and how it makes my body feel like. So it's homi is the Korean traditional tool to garden or harvest some small crops, and started to clean out my backyard. There's some small place that my landlord gave me access to it, so I started to like work on it, and like I think I tried to do it every day for like 2 to 3 hours. I played some music and write. I started my day by writing some short journal in the morning, and like do the gardening first. and there were some cats from neighborhoods. They always came to my garden and to poop there because other part there's so many weeds, so they can't. But mine is like clean, so they started to use it often. So often, like I tried to water my plants and water the soil so that the cats don't use it as their restroom. So I needed to do it every day because it dries. So yeah, to keep it clean. Yeah, and when I was working on the gardening, and I also raised some Korean herbs and some vegetables that I can actually cook, and it really reminded me of my grandmother from father's side and mother's side both, because they always grow some tomato or cucumber and sesame leaves and ship it to my family's home, and like always like we had a lot of like food to cook with it. And when I use the tool, the homi, and like really care about my plants, I felt my ancestors' presence. I felt my grandmother. So it was a really great motivation and turning point for me to realize, oh, my ancestor is not only the specific figures, but it's the food I eat, the recipe I learned, and the gestures I'm doing, and the land, and how I spend my life. So I think it was my first time to actually feel their presence, not just in front of the monitor, but like when I'm using my body like them. Yeah, and it really motivated me a lot.